you disclose that information in any way, all of it needs to be destroyed now. But if you disclose it in any way, it's going to put me in a position where I will have to withdraw from the case. If you all choose to go on the internet and try to publicize this stuff, that's going to create real problems.
Okay.
You can't do it, is what I'm telling you. You cannot do it. I will have to move to withdraw from the case.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
So make sure everybody's aware of that. Okay. If any of that is posted anywhere on the internet, we're going to have problems. Whatever copies have been made of that, those need to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay. If they get disclosed, that is going to put me in a situation where I will have to withdraw from the case.
Okay.
If you
This is not another boring podcast. Mustafa through the police body cam. Judge Carol Weimer, you are under the microscope. Now, for the past couple of podcasts, we've been removing the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, from under this microscope. And instead, our focus is Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood. Brad Haywood, you are under the microscope. Now, what we're going to do on this podcast, we're going to go over the transcript in court. That transcript is now public. We're going to go over the transcript, and we're going to find out what Brad Haywood is doing in the Mustafa al-Jazari case. Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, was assigned to Mustafa's case in February. And the question is, what has Brad Haywood done in the Mustafa al-Jazari case since February? It's almost going over a year. Mustafa has trial in March. Now, trial is just around the corner. And the question for Brad Haywood, what have you done in the Mustafa al-Jazari case? Mustafa, the question is for Brad Haywood, did you hire an independent expert to reconstruct the vehicle accident? So far, that hasn't been done. Did you hire an independent expert to go in and extract the dash camera, the full dash camera, with the audio? That hasn't been done. Brad Haywood, the county, the government gave Brad Haywood money to hire an independent expert for the reconstruction of the vehicle accident, hire an independent expert for the extraction of the dash camera. That has not been done yet. So you're talking about a defense attorney that's been sitting on Mustafa's case for almost a year now. Trial is just around the corner, and that hasn't been done. What is Brad Haywood doing in the Mustafa al-Jazari case? Why hasn't he done the extraction and the reconstruction? Now, Brad Haywood doesn't pick up the phone when Mustafa called him, and he's completely unresponsive. And we're going to find out why is Brad Haywood unresponsive and why Brad Haywood hasn't done anything in the Mustafa al-Jazari case. Now, in September, specifically September 16, the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, ordered the reconstruction of the vehicle and the extraction of the dash camera. So where is Mustafa's defense attorney? He has money for independent experts. He has an order from the judge to get it done. Mustafa has not been updated that those two things has been done. A bigger question is, the police department did an extraction on Mustafa's cell phone and Dorothy's 3 cell phones. What the county did, what the police department did, they downloaded everything in Mustafa's cell phone and everything in his girlfriend's cell phones. And what the county did, they put it on a flash drive and they mailed it to Brad Haywood. In a phone call I had with Brad Haywood just literally 3 weeks ago. Just about 3 weeks ago. And that's a recorded phone call. Brad Haywood said he has not gone through the hard drive. Why not? You've been sitting on Mustafa's case for just about a year, and you're telling me that you haven't gone through Mustafa's cell phone dump? Mustafa's cell phone dump is just about 1 terabyte of material. I mean, that's a large drive. Trial is just around the corner. When are you going to go through the hard drive? When are you going to sit down with your client and go over this hard drive? That's exculpatory evidence. Now, when you find out that Mustafa's cell phone has an app that's connected to the dash camera inside his vehicle that automatically uploads the full dash camera. So when the police department did a cell phone dump, that's on Mustafa's cell phone. Mustafa's dash camera, the full dash camera, is on the drive. When the police department downloaded Mustafa's cell phone, that dash camera is on Mustafa's drive. The drive that the county mailed to his defense attorney, Brad Haywood. Mustafa has another app. It's called a Google Nest. Days on days of video material that shows you the relationship that Mustafa has with his family. That's also on that drive. There's an app on Mustafa's cell phone that automatically uploads all the videos. There's a third app called Alexa that transcribes everything that went on inside the apartment. That's also on Mustafa's cell phone. That's also on the drive that the county mailed to Brad Haywood. Now, we don't have to sit here and speculate. In a transcript, in court, we have the transcript where Mustafa's previous defense attorney, Blake Weiner, told the presiding judge that the dash camera is on Mustafa's cell phone, is on the drive that the county mailed to him when they did a cell phone dump on Mustafa's cell phone. So we don't have to sit here and speculate whether the dash camera is on Mustafa's cell phone. The previous defense attorney told us was on that drive. And Mustafa's new defense attorney has it. Now, why is this relevant to this whole entire case? In a motion to dismiss, Officer Chad Mason tells the presiding judge, and we have that transcript, he says that he violated the chain of custody, that he took Mustafa's dash camera off the windshield back to his vehicle, and he downloaded the dash camera into his computer. He said, I took the SD card, plugged it into my computer, and downloaded the dash camera. And then went back and put that dash camera, he put the SD card back in the dash camera, put it back on the windshield inside Mustafa's vehicle after the accident. Now, he said 2 days later is when I got a warrant for that dash camera. He said, I sat on those files for 2 days, and then 2 days later is when I got a warrant for the dash camera. He said 2 days later is when he uploaded the files to the server, evidence.com, the police department server. What he was supposed to do is take the dash camera, get a warrant for the dash camera, take the dash camera to digital forensic, Kathy Zymuth. And Kathy Zymuth with digital forensic is supposed to mirror and copy the files inside this dash camera to protect the integrity of the dash camera, of the files in this dash camera. And she was supposed to upload it to the server, the police department server, evidence.com. Officer Chad Mason tells us that didn't happen. Instead, he's the one that took it back to his vehicle. He's the one that sat on the files for 2 days, and then 2 days later when he got a warrant. Well, the problem with this whole entire conversation is that today the county, the Commonwealth Attorney, Amy Ashworth, and Prosecutor Sarah Sammy, and Prosecutor Stephanie Buck, they tell us that this dash camera doesn't have audio and is cut before impact. And when you look at this dash camera, there are 17 frames missing from the camera facing inside the vehicle. I don't have to be a digital forensic to tell you, Officer Chad Mason cut and muted this dash camera. And the reason I say that is because when Kathy Zymuth, digital forensic, finally got this dash camera, she said that this dash camera does have audio, and the county has been concealing it for 2.5 years. Commonwealth Amy Ashworth sealed off the case. So when you put in a FOIA, you can't verify anything that's coming out of this case. Your FOIA is going to get denied. your Freedom of Information Act to get any police body cam, to get any document, to get the dash camera inside Mustafa's vehicle, your FOIA is denied because Commonwealth Amy Ashworth sealed off this case. Well, since we have the file, I managed to hack the server for the police department, access evidence.com, steal the Mustafa Al-Jazari file, and I'm leaking it all over the internet. And I find a document in Mustafa's case that Officer Zymuth says that this dash camera does have audio. Officer Zymuth testifies in a motion to dismiss that this dash camera has audio. So, knowing that this dash camera has audio, knowing that there is a drive that the county mailed to the defense attorney, a 1 terabyte hard drive mailed to the defense attorney, Mustafa's cell phone has an app connected to this dash camera. So even though Chad Mason cut and muted this dash camera, the original dash camera is on that drive. It's in the clouds. It's connected to an app. Automatically, when the police department did a cell phone dump, they have the original dash camera. So even though Chad Mason got to this dash camera and he said, I violated the chain of custody, took it back to my car, sat on it for 2 days, uploaded to the server, got warrant for it 2 days later, even though this officer tampered with the dash camera, with the files, the original dash camera is on the drive. Now explain to me, why has Mustafa's defense attorney avoiding the hard drive? Mustafa's defense attorney has been assigned to Mustafa's case since February. 3 weeks ago, when I call him on a phone, on a recorded phone call, he tells me he has not gone through the drive. And he refused to sit down with Mustafa to go over what's on this drive. Is it fair to say that Mustafa's defense attorney is protecting the county? Because once the dash camera comes out, it's going to show that this police department falsified the whole entire case. They cut and muted a dash camera. We're going to go over, I sent an email to Brad Haywood, just so that it's on the record that Mustafa's dash camera, he can't come out later and say, oh, I didn't know that the dash camera is on this drive. I didn't know there is an app for this dash camera. I didn't know there's Google Nest videos on this drive that the county gave me. No, we emailed him and told him specifically that there is exculpatory evidence on this drive that's mailed to you by the county where the full dash camera is on this drive. That's going to show the county falsified a whole entire case. Cut and muted Mustafa's dash camera. That the home videos is on the drive. Mustafa also mailed a letter to the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, demanding that his defense attorney sit down with him and go over the hard drive. I don't think that's too much to ask. Mustafa's defense attorney can have a visit. He can visit Mustafa. He can bring in his computer. He can bring in that drive, and he can go over the material in that drive. At the end of the day, if Mustafa's defense attorney does not do that, that's a violation of Mustafa's due process. Brad Haywood, you are under this microscope, and we're going to continue to put you under this microscope and find out and ask the question. The community is asking questions. Are you a defense attorney that's protecting the county in the falsified case of Mustafa Al-Jazari? We're going to go over the transcript. We have that transcript. We're going to go over the motions that's been filed by Brad Haywood, and we're going to find out. And one of the main questions that we're going to be asking, why has Brad Haywood, why did Brad Haywood take the expert fund that the county gave him to hire an independent expert and gave it to the prosecutor? In court, Brad Haywood tells the presiding judge that he no longer will hire his independent expert. He's taken the money that the county gave him to hire an independent expert to go in and extract the dash camera, and he's given it to the prosecutor's independent expert. How does it make sense that you're going to give it to the independent expert of the prosecutor that's been using officers that falsified this whole entire case? That's been lying about a dash camera for 2.5 years. You're going to give it to her independent expert when you just got done arguing in a Brady motion that this whole entire case is biased, has officers that falsified this case, has a bias from the moment they showed up on the scene, that a prosecutor has been concealing and using officers that falsified this case. You told Judge Carol Weimer that the main investigator falsified your Mustafa's statements. That's what you said to the presiding judge. You told him that Robert Drum falsified your client, Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements, the foundation of this case. And then you're going to turn around, take the expert fund, and give it to the independent expert of the prosecutor? We're going to go over a motion where it was filed in court by Brad Haywood, a joint motion to take the funds and give it to the prosecutor. We have that motion, and that's on the record. This is going to be a giant podcast. We're going to read the transcript. We're going to go over the motion. We're going to play the videos, the body cam that's been sealed by the county. So when we read the transcript, we're going to go over. We're also going to play the videos that show that this county falsified a whole entire case.
If any of that is posted anywhere on the internet, we're going to have problems. Whatever copies have been made of that, those need to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay? If they get disclosed, that is going to put me in a situation where I will have to withdraw from the case.
Okay.
If you disclose that information in any way, all of it needs to be destroyed now. But if you disclose it in any way, it's going to put me in a position where I will have to withdraw from the case. If you all choose to go on the internet and try to publicize this stuff, that's going to create real problems.
Okay.
You can't do it, is what I'm telling you. You cannot do it. I will have to move to withdraw from the case.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
So make sure everybody's aware of that. Okay. If any of that is posted anywhere on the internet, we're going to have problems. Whatever copies have been made of that, those need to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay? If they get disclosed, that is going to put me in a situation where I will have to withdraw from the case.
Okay.
If you
This is not another boring podcast, Mustafa. Through the police body cam, Brad Haywood, you are under the microscope. Mustafa's defense attorney is going to be under the microscope until we figure out what he's doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. There are things that Mustafa's defense attorney is doing that are questionable. And when I say questionable, it shows that he's protecting the county. Now, I have a document where Mustafa's defense attorney files a Brady motion. And in this Brady motion, he argues that, and he tells the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, and we're going to go over the transcript. We're going to read the transcript. So that way you're not sitting here taking my word for it. No, we get to hear what this Mustafa's defense attorney is saying in court. Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, tells the judge that the main investigator falsified his client, Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements. And this is the foundation of the case. The main investigator said that, Mustafa, you told me you were arguing inside the vehicle. Of course, there's a recording that Mustafa never said that. But this investigator falsified Mustafa's statement. He said Mustafa told him he was arguing inside the vehicle with his girlfriend. Mustafa never said that. Now, Mustafa's defense attorney goes on and he tells the presiding judge that the children, Mustafa's girlfriend has a 9, a 10, a 14, a 16. The children have been weaponized by the police department. Evidence show in this case that the police department lied to the children, weaponized the children against Mustafa. And we have the forensic interview that show that the police department weaponized and lied to the children while Mustafa was in a coma. I mean, at one point, they told the children that Mustafa ran away, left their baby sister to bleed to death. And the police tell the children, we could have saved your baby sister if Mustafa did not run away. Wait a minute, Mustafa is in a coma. Mustafa was in a coma. But you have police officers, specifically Investigator Romero, telling the children that Mustafa ran away, that we could have saved your baby sister. They're weaponizing the children, a 9, a 10, a 14, a 16. That's child abuse. So Mustafa's defense attorney put that on their record. And what Mustafa's defense attorney was demanding is a line of body cams that are missing in this case. And that's Brady material, exculpatory evidence that showed the police department weaponized the children. Mustafa's defense attorney tells the presiding judge that the prosecutor, along with the police department, that we have a body cam that show Prosecutor Sarasami and Investigator Robert Drum blocked the reconstruction of the vehicle. At one point, we hired an independent expert. There was a judge order 2.5 years ago. And on body cam, it shows that the police department, specifically Investigator Robert Drum, along with Prosecutor Sarasami, blocked the independent expert from reconstructing this vehicle. And Mustafa's defense attorney in the Brady motion demanded a judge order, another judge order, to have another independent expert go in and actually do the reconstruction. Mustafa sits in solitary confinement for over 2.5 years, and they have not reconstructed the vehicle accident. So that's all in the Brady motion. Also, Mustafa's defense attorney told the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, that the moment that officers showed up on scene, they condemned Mustafa guilty. They haven't looked at the dash camera. They haven't looked at the computer inside the vehicle. They haven't reconstructed this vehicle accident. And they condemned Mustafa guilty the moment they showed up. And they're talking about being already briefed about Mustafa. They already knew Mustafa. They condemned him guilty the moment he showed up. Mustafa lay on the floor in one of the body cams. He lays on the floor. He's in a coma in front of his vehicle after the vehicle accident. And officers show up, specifically Officer Casey Fine. And he tells the main investigator, he condemns Mustafa guilty the moment he showed up. And what you find out is that Mustafa had an active lawsuit against the police department for $500,000. There was a settlement that the police department had to agree on. Mustafa was suing the police department prior to the vehicle accident. So when officers showed up on scene, they already condemned him guilty. A Mustafa in Prince William County has to be put back into his place. How dare a Mustafa sue the police? How dare a Mustafa walk around believing that he has a constitutional right, that the Constitution applied to him, that when his rights are violated, how dare he sues the police? Mustafa had $500,000 lawsuit against the police. It was a giant Brady motion, and Mustafa's defense attorney, we have a transcript, and he put a lot of things on the record. Now we have a document, a sealed document, that show that Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, went behind closed doors and sat down with the prosecutor and withdrew the whole entire Brady motion. And the question is, the judge granted you the Brady motion, granted you access into the missing body cams, material that will show that this police department falsified a whole entire case. Why did you withdraw the Brady motion? What deal did you make with the prosecutor that you're no longer going up against the police department? Are you protecting the police department and patching up this case for the county? Were you threatened by the county? These are all valid questions. Because we have a document that's sealed. We're going to go over this document that show Mustafa's defense attorney is no longer going after the police department. Let's pull up this document. This is a sealed document that show Mustafa's defense attorney sat down with the prosecutor and he agreed, because when you do a Brady motion, there is something called an order that you sit with the prosecutor and agree on. Now, the question is, the presiding judge granted you your Brady motion, but in this order, in this document, we're going to go over it. See if I can zoom in. There we go. It shows that Brad Haywood is no longer going after the police department. Now, who is Brad Haywood working for? The judge grants you Brady motions, and you sit down with the prosecutor, and you're no longer pursuing evidence that show the police department falsified a whole entire case. The police department falsified your client Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements. The police department crushed and staged Mustafa's vehicle. The police department cut and muted Mustafa's dash camera. The police department weaponized a 9, a 10, a 14, a 16 against Mustafa children. That's child abuse. You're no longer going after the police department. By law, they're supposed to grant you this Brady material. The line of documents, the line of body cam, that are clearly missing from the server. The police department server uploaded, edited police body cams, and this is what Brad Haywood was arguing inside the court. He tells the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, that when he's going over these body cams, it shows that the police department edited and muted a line of body cams, and some body cams are completely visibly missing from the file, from the Mustafa Al-Jazari file. What they've done is they edit, cut, and muted police body cams before uploading it to the police department server, evidence.com. And Judge Carol Weimer, in his defense, he granted and demanded that the prosecutor gives the defense, Brad Haywood, the missing body cams. Well, let's go over this sealed document and see how Brad Haywood agreed that he's no longer pursuing it. And a valid question is, why? You're either protecting a police department that falsified your client's case, patching up this case for the police department. You're either terrified, you were threatened to just walk away. Let's look at this document and see what's going on in the Brady motion and what Brad Haywood agreed to back off from. Order on defense. Okay, so this document reads, order on defense motion for production of Brady material. On October 3rd, 2025, this matter comes before the court on defense motion for production of Brady material. The court heard argument from counsel for the defendant and Commonwealth, reviewed the written submission, and made the following ruling as to each. All right, so defense request. All right, request 11A. So what we're going to do, we're going to read this order, and then we're going to go into the motion that Brad Haywood filed in court. And then we're going to go into the opposition, where the prosecutor, Sarah Sammy, filed an opposition. She filed a motion in opposition. And then we're going to go through the transcript of what was said in court. And then we're going to come back to this document to see what Brad Haywood is no longer pursuing, even though he was granted the Brady material, the body cams in the document that showed the county falsified this case. He says, prosecutor, you don't have to give me any of these documents. You don't have to give me any of these body cams. Why? And the question, a valid question is, are you protecting a police department? Have you been threatened by this police department to walk away? These are all good questions. All right, so request 11A. Defense request any and all evidence that alone or in conjunction with other evidence of any character may cast doubt upon the defendant's guilt. Court ruling to the extent that anything requested in November 11 constitutes Brady material, regardless of whether the Commonwealth determined to be Brady to be material or whether it intends to call the person as a witness. If the Commonwealth has in its possession or has access information that is exculpatory, it must provide it to the defense. All right. Request 11B, I, and 3. Defense request. Information indicating that the expected and or actual testimony of any prosecution witness is inconsistent with refuted by or failed to corroborate other information known to the Commonwealth and information regarding the circumstances of any witness statements suggesting reduced reliability. What the police department did in the Mustafa al-Jazari case is that they brought in individuals that on body cam, by the way, these are sealed body cams. That's why the county was comfortable, the prosecutor, Sarah Sammy, was comfortable bringing these individuals. And they sealed off those body cams. They're comfortable. On body cams, it showed that the county brought in fake witnesses, individuals that are creating a story about Mustafa. And on body cams, it shows that these individuals are saying, we were not there, we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything. They're essentially manufacturing a story about Mustafa. The county sealed off those body cams, but now there's a giant leak. These body cams are all over the internet. It shows that the county falsified this case. So Brad Haywood, what he's telling, what the judge granted him is any information that shows the credibility of the witnesses, their background, their criminal background, any material that shows that the officer promised these individuals that to testify against Mustafa, lie about Mustafa, any material, the defense is entitled to that material. And there is a lot of it all over this case. There are body cams where officers are telling individuals, we need you, we need to get our ducks in a row. Mustafa is a bad guy. We need you to testify against Mustafa, and essentially allowed individuals to lie about Mustafa. Even though when you watch the full body cam, those individuals are saying, we weren't there, we didn't see anything. But they wrote police reports. They removed that portion where those individuals are saying, we weren't there, we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, and essentially wrote police reports that are falsified. And only when now that there is a giant leak that the body cams are on the internet, you realize that the county, and specifically prosecutor Sarah Sammy, used individuals that are fake witnesses. So here the judge grants the defense any material that show that the county used fake witnesses. The credibility of the witnesses. All right. Court ruling. All right, let's read that again. 11BI3. Defense requests information indicating that the expected and or actual testimony of any prosecution witness is inconsistent with, refuted by, or failed to corroborate other information known to the Commonwealth and information regarding the circumstances of any witness statements suggesting reduced reliability. Court ruling, no formal ruling entered at this time. The Commonwealth agrees to follow up with all officers to ensure that all material, including notes, report, photographs, unedited recording, and all body-worn camera and other cameras footage are uploaded and made available to defense counsel. That's not true. This paragraph says no formal ruling entered at this time. That's absolutely for Brad Haywood to agree with this order, because this is what the prosecutor Sarah Sammy, prosecutor Stephanie Buck wrote, and Brad Haywood agreed on. That's a flat-out lie. In court, we're going to go over the transcript. Judge Carol Weimer specifically ordered the prosecutor to give Brad Haywood, the defense, all the material, all body cams, and all material that showed that this police department used fake witnesses. This police department falsified a whole entire case. Any body cam, any document, any material that showed that the county used fake witnesses and officers that falsified this case. The judge ordered the prosecutor to give up this to the defense. Here, they wrote a paragraph where there is no formal ruling. That's not true. We're going to go over the transcript and we're going to look at it. So you have a defense attorney that's agreeing. I mean, it's not matching up with what actually took place in court. And the question is, why is the defense attorney allowing a prosecutor to misrepresent what took place in court? That's a good question. Is he protecting the prosecutor? Is he protecting the county? Absolutely. Either he's willingly protecting the county that falsified his client's case, or he's been threatened into going along with what the county is telling him to do. All right, request 12. We can put that on the screen. There we go. Defense requests expert, scientific, medical, or psychological report inconsistent with the Commonwealth's case or tending to support the defense case. Court ruling granted. The Commonwealth must provide any expert or scientific report inconsistent with the prosecution's case or tending to support the defendant's case. This is really interesting. Request 12 is really interesting because in Mustafa's case, there is an expert that was brought in by the county, Lucy Guarinero, and she wrote just about a 26-page analyzing how Mustafa is abusive to his girlfriend, to the children. Well, the interesting thing is, when you watch the police body cams, there are forensic interviews and there are police body cams of individuals that the county brought in that the reports are not matching up with the actual video of the forensic interview and the individuals that were brought in police body cams. And Lucy Guarinero, the expert for the county, what the county did, when you read the reports, Mustafa's ex-boyfriend, Glenn Ford, evidence showed that he's abusive to Dorothy and the children. What the county did, what the police officer did, they supplemented whatever on video they say Glenn Ford, they wrote in the report Mustafa Al-Jazari. So anything that Glenn Ford, the abusive ex-boyfriend, did is supplemented in the report as Mustafa Al-Jazari. And that has been given to Lucy Guarinero. Anything that the ex-husband, Divine Jones, evidence show that he's abusive to Dorothy and the kids. What the county did, what officer did in their reports, they took the ex-boyfriend, ex-husband's name, Divine Jones, and Glenn Ford, and they supplemented Mustafa Al-Jazari. And those reports are given to Lucy Guarinero, and based on those supplements, where they supplemented Mustafa instead of the ex-boyfriend and the ex-husband, Lucy Guarinero, the county's expert, is writing reports that Mustafa is abusive to his girlfriend and the children. She's basing it on those falsified police reports. So here, the judge grants any material that show that Lucy Guarinero, the expert, the county's expert, is using material that is falsified. It's basing her decision that Mustafa is abusive based on falsified material. Now, the bottom line of this case is there is Google Nest videos inside the apartment. What the county did, they brought in an ex-boyfriend. They brought in other individuals that tell you Mustafa is abusive, but then they turn around and say, we didn't see anything. There are Google Nest videos inside the apartment that shows it's a beautiful relationship. For 2.5 years, the county pretended that this does not exist. These Google Nest videos does not exist. Even though they're on the drive, because Mustafa's cell phone has an app connected to the Google Nest, connected to the Alexa, connected to the dash camera inside Mustafa's vehicle, connected to the Google Nest inside the apartment. The police department did a cell phone dump on Mustafa's cell phone, and they downloaded a 1 terabyte hard drive from Mustafa's cell phone and the 3 cell phones from his girlfriend. And they gave the hard drive to Mustafa's defense. we managed to hack the server for the Google Nest videos and downloaded all the videos. So we have those videos. And I remember at the time when the family tried to supply the Commonwealth attorney and the police department with those videos, Commonwealth Amy Ashworth at the time threatened the family with the sheriff office, and she refused to look at the Google Nest videos. When you access the server, when I finally hacked the police department server, evidence.com, those videos are not there. The county for 2.5 years avoided that there are Google Nest videos that show it's a beautiful relationship. And instead, they brought in individuals on police body cam, tell you we were not there, and they took their statements that Mustafa is abusive. Even though those individuals are telling you, we were not there, we didn't hear anything, we didn't see anything. Essentially, they're manufacturing a story about Mustafa. And the question for Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, you're sitting on a 1 terabyte drive. You have Mustafa's Google Nest videos, you have Mustafa's dash camera, you have Mustafa's Alexa, and for a whole entire year, you've been avoiding the hard drive that showed that the county falsified Mustafa's statements. Mustafa's case, the whole entire case is falsified. So back to what we're talking about here. Request 12. So the judge ordered any material that showed the county's expert is relying on information that is falsified. Any material that showed that, the judge ordered the prosecution, prosecutor Sarah Sammy, to give up that to the defense, Brad Haywood. All right, so far so good. Request 13. Let's see. There we go. Defense request any and all information tending to mitigate the offense, support a conviction for a lesser offense, or support a lesser punishment. Okay. Is the prosecution basing all this on falsified material? I mean, Mustafa sits in solitary confinement for over 2.5 years on murder charges. They're charging Mustafa with murder. Now, wait a minute. This is a car accident. It shows that Mustafa's foot is on the brake the whole entire time. The computer inside the vehicle, inside Mustafa's vehicle, showed that Mustafa's foot is on the brake the whole entire time. It shows that Mustafa did everything he can to avoid a vehicle accident. I mean, for 2.5 years, they told us that Mustafa drove into oncoming traffic, and when you look at the steering angle, it's counterclockwise, away from all the vehicle. The police department inspected Mustafa's vehicle and found brake failure. That's on body cam. That's on a sealed body cam that the county buried for 2.5 years. Mustafa slams on the brake doesn't work. Mustafa did everything he can to avoid every vehicle, and he made it to the 4th lane. He did everything he can to avoid the vehicle accident. He makes it to the 4th lane, and the SUV turned into Mustafa. This is a car accident. They tell you that Mustafa is arguing inside the vehicle. When you watch the dash camera, and what they sealed from this community is that Mustafa and Dorothy are sharing a cigarette. Where's the argument? You've been telling us that they're arguing for 2.5 years. Evidence showed that the main investigator, and this is what Brad Haywood argued in court in a Brady motion, that the main investigator falsified his client, Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements. The main investigator said, Mustafa, you told me you were arguing inside the vehicle. And then when you listen to the conversation, there's a recording. Mustafa never said that. This investigator falsified Mustafa's statement. A whole entire case is falsified. This is a car accident, and the police department falsified the whole entire case. All right, so request 13, any and all information tending to mitigate the charged offense, supporting a conviction for a lesser offense, or support a lesser punishment. Court ruling granted. The Commonwealth attorney will continue to disclose any information in its possession tending to mitigate the charged offense, support a conviction for a lesser offense, or support a lesser punishment as required under Brady versus Maryland. All right, request 14A through G. Defense request or information revealing criminal or professional misconduct, internal, discipline, or credibility related issues concerning officers or witnesses. All right, court ruling. Defense withdraws its request as to internal affairs files at this time. The Commonwealth agrees to allow defense counsel to review the CWA summary of internal affairs files and or schedule a time for review. A protective order is entered regarding these material. Defense may refile if it later identifies deficiencies. The Commonwealth agrees to disclosure all witnesses' criminal history to defense counsel. This is a huge problem. The judge orders that Mustafa's defense can go in and review the internal affairs files for the investigators involved in this case. The judge granted Mustafa's defense, Brad Haywood, to go in and see the internal files for these officers. The officer that falsified his client, Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements, the officers that are involved that cut and muted this dash camera, the officer involved that crushed and staged Mustafa's vehicle, and the judge grants him to go in and look at the internal files. Did they get in trouble for it? What did they get in trouble for? Are they certified to handle this case? And Mustafa's defense attorney says, he sits down with the prosecutor, and he says, I'm no longer interested in looking at the internal files. Defense withdraws its request as to internal affairs files at this time. Why? Now, when you find out, when we originally filed with internal affairs that Officer Robert Drum falsified Mustafa's statements, internal affairs at the time told us that this investigator is not certified to handle this case. It's not certified to be on this case. That's what internal affairs said. And we have the recording from that conversation. And now this defense attorney has a chance to go in and find out and have evidence that this officer that he's telling Judge Weimer falsified his client Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements is not certified to be on this case. And he says, that's okay, prosecutor. That's okay, police department. I'm not going to pursue your officer. I don't want to disqualify him off this. I mean, when he doesn't go after this officer and he doesn't go into the internal files that's going to show him, it's going to disqualify the officer. He's going to get him off this case. But instead, Mustafa's defense attorney is protecting this officer. What do you call that? Other than protecting the officer. Now, in a bond motion, prosecutor Sarah Sammy, in a bond motion, prosecutor Sarah Sammy took Officer Chad Mason and she put him on the stand. And she had him testify that he's an expert witness. And he went into the computer inside Mustafa's vehicle and he falsified the whole entire data. At the time, the Mustafa's case was sealed. And what prosecutor Sarah Sammy, she proffered to the judge. Basically, what that means is she tells the judge one thing, but she doesn't have to present the evidence. And then she went and put Chad Mason on the stand. And what Chad Mason did, he lied about the data inside Mustafa's computer. The data inside Mustafa's computer, today we have that. And it shows that Mustafa's foot was on the brake the whole entire time. Officer Chad Mason lied about the whole entire thing. Now, in a motion to dismiss a couple of months later, Officer Chad Mason took the stand and he testified that he is not an expert. wait a minute, you're either an expert or you're not an expert. Prosecutor Sarah Sammy put you on the stand, and she told the presiding judge, Judge Carol Weimer, that you are certified as an expert. And then we find out down the road that this investigator is not an expert. Here, Judge Carol Weimer is granting Brad Haywood, Mustafa's defense attorney, to look in the internal files of Officer Chad Mason and find out if he's certified. And he's going to find out that he's not certified. He's not an expert. And he can, one, show that Prosecutor Sarah Sammy lied about her main investigator being an expert. Two, Officer Chad Mason is not an expert. He's not certified. And this defense attorney says, yeah, I'm not going to pursue. I'm not going to go in. I'm going to withdraw my request to internal affairs files. I'm not going to go after this officer. I don't want to disqualify him as an investigator. What do you mean? The judge granted you to look into the internal files. And you withdraw your request? If I didn't know any better, you're protecting the officer. You're protecting the main investigator on this case that falsified your client, Mustafa Al-Jazari's statements. Brad Haywood, we have a lot of questions for you, sir. Are you protecting this county? Are you threatened by this county? I mean, this is questionable. The judge granted you to go in and look at the internal files, and clearly these officers are not certified. This prosecutor are using officers that are not qualified. I mean, this investigator in a bond motion took Mustafa's bond because of his testimony, because he lied on the stand. He took your client's bond away. Instead, Mustafa sat in solitary confinement because an officer took the stand and he lied about him being an expert. Prosecutor Sarah Sammy lied and used an officer, Officer Chad Mason, that this is an expert. And you have an opportunity to get to the bottom of it, and you say, this is what he says. You're going to zoom in? Let's highlight that just so. Let's see if we can highlight. I think we should be able to highlight. Let's see. There we go. All right, we can highlight. All right, so defense withdraw its request to internal affairs files. There we go. That's request 14 through G. Brad Haywood doesn't want to go after this officer. He doesn't want to expose that Prosecutor Sarah Sammy used an officer that's not certified, that's not qualified, certified, and is lying in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. Defense withdraw its request as to internal affair files. All right, so let's continue. All right, request 15 and 16A through F. Records or information revealing prior reputation or disposition for untruthfulness or other credibility related character traits of any Commonwealth witness. All right, so the credibility of the witnesses that the prosecutor is using. In this case, we have body cams that show the prosecutor and the police department use individuals that tell you on body cams that have been sealed by the county. They're no longer sealed. We've leaked them on the internet. That tell you we weren't there. We didn't see anything. And when you look into their background, criminal background, they have extensive criminal background. So here, let's see. All right. So record or information revealing prior reputation or disposition for untruthfulness or other credibility related character traits of any Commonwealth witness. Court ruling, any impeachment. All right. So the court ruled. Zoom in. There we go. There we go. That's better. All right. All right. The court ruled any impeachment, evidence, or information bearing on character traits regarding credibility or reputations for untruthfulness must be disclosed by the Commonwealth. All right, so the court ruled that the prosecutor and the Commonwealth attorney give that to the defense. Request 17. Defense request evidence of personal or professional bias or animosity against defendant by any Commonwealth agent or witness. The court ruled the Commonwealth is ordered to use its best effort to determine what was said during any muted portions of recording involving investigators Mason and Drum, and to explain to the expert possible why the audio was muted. The Commonwealth must inquire of the officers involved to ascertain what was discussed during those periods. All right, so we have body cams where the minute the officer showed up, there's a clear bias where they condemned Mustafa guilty. Mustafa is laying on the floor in front of his vehicle in a coma, and the officers condemned him guilty. They say he's at fault. And they haven't reconstructed the vehicle. They haven't looked at the dash camera. They haven't done anything to investigate this case. And they said Mustafa is guilty. Clearly, there's a bias. And the ruling, the judge, there are missing body cams. And the judge ruled that the prosecutor give all the missing body cams to the defense and find out what went on, what's going on, the missing material. Why are these body cams muted? Why are there missing evidence, exculpatory evidence that show the police department falsified the whole entire case? All right, request 18A. Defense requests evidence supporting the Commonwealth statement alleging defense counsel misconduct. The defense is satisfied with the Commonwealth's explanation as provided in written response and requests no further remedy from the court. Great. He's buddy-buddy with the prosecutor. He's satisfied. He is satisfied. We're going to read the motion and what she said in her opposition and what motion he filed. And this defense attorney is all of a sudden satisfied. And I found it really interesting. This prosecutor at one point told the presiding judge that Muhammad, the brother of Mustafa, had bought an AR-15 with 1,000 round and insinuating that he was going to shoot up the courthouse. I mean, what are you insinuating? You're telling the judge that the brother of Mustafa got an AR-15, Your Honor, and he got 1,000 round, Your Honor. I mean, is that not the definition of defamation? And then she later tells him, Your Honor, I'm going to withdraw my statements because we relied on information that was false. Well, you withdrew that and what you said here, but did you not also tell the judge that the mother assaulted you in court? Did you withdraw those statements? You told the judge at one point that the mother assaulted you inside the courthouse. I find it funny and interesting that you never brought criminal charges against the mother and you never brought in the CCTV video from the courthouse. But then you alleged to the judge that the mother assaulted you in court. Is that not defamation? Did you withdraw those statements? But Mustafa's defense is satisfied. Wait a minute. Did you know at one point that you alleged that the family was manufacturing bombs and they were going to set fires to the courthouse? did you withdraw those statements? But Mustafa's defense is satisfied. What are you satisfied for? Why are you not going after this prosecutor for defaming your client and his family? Clearly, there is a relationship between this defense attorney and the prosecutor. He's not going after prosecutor Sarah Sammy. He's not going after prosecutor Stephanie Buck. It sure sounds like he's protecting those prosecutors. He's protecting those officers. All right, let's continue. Court ruling, the defense is satisfied with the Commonwealth's explanation as provided in its written response and requests no further remedy from the court. Request 18B, I through V, defense request, Prince William County Police Department policies and procedures. In effect from April 2023 to the present concerning body-worn cameras, evidence preservation, crime scene, documentation, interaction with child witness and witness interview integrity. Court ruling granted as agreed. A protective order is entered prohibiting dissemination. Okay, so the police department weaponized the children. There is evidence where it shows that the police department sat down with a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 14, a 16, Dorothy's children, and told them that Mustafa is at fault. That at one point they told the children, and this is coming up in the forensic interviews. The children are talking about what the police department told them before they walked them into a forensic interview. And the question is, where are those body cams? I mean, if you have a situation where the police department is weaponizing children and the police department will remove those body cam, that's a problem. The children are talking about. At one point, one of the children say, Javen, the 14-year-old, says the police department told him that Mustafa ran away, left his baby sister to bleed to death. And if Mustafa hadn't ran away, the police department could have saved his baby sister. But Mustafa ran away. Mustafa was in a coma. Mustafa was in a coma. Mustafa was helicoptered to the hospital, was in a coma. But the police department is lying to children. And then the police department removed those body cams. So here, the judge granted that the prosecution office find the missing body cams, because you're not going to, as a police officer, Investigator Romero is not going to sit down with children without body cams before they were walked into the forensic interview. Where are those body cams? Those are not in Mustafa's file. It's not in the server, evidence.com, the police department server. The police department removed them to hide the fact that the police department weaponized the children against Mustafa. Google Nest video showed that it's a beautiful relationship. And the police department, the forensic interview show that the police department weaponized those children. Defense request. All right, so let's see, where are we? All right. Request 18C through D. Internal affairs or disciplinary record concerning Officer Chad Mason and Robert Drum. Court ruling based on the Commonwealth agreement to provide access, defense withdraw this request, reserving the right to refile if the production is incomplete. Interesting. So internal affairs. Defense withdrawal. So the judge grants you to go in and access the internal files for those officers. And you say, you know what, Prosecutor Sarah Sammy? You know what, Prosecutor Stephanie Buck? I'm going to let you write me a summary of what you have in the system. I'm going to trust you, Prosecutor Sarah Sammy, that's been lying about this case for over 2.5 years. I'm going to trust you. Why not go in and find out what these officers are certified with, what they were in trouble for? Why not go in and find out? Why are you so soft on the prosecutor? Why are you protecting the prosecutor? Why are you protecting her officers? By the way, this is a sealed document. No one was supposed to find out that he withdrew here, he withdrew there. He's no longer interested in the internal files. He's no longer interested in finding out if these officers are certified. He's no longer interested in, you're going to find out that he's no longer interested in getting the body cams that show these officers falsified the whole entire case. This is a sealed document. So you have a situation where Mustafa's defense attorney goes in, put on a show in a Brady motion, and doesn't tell his client, Mustafa Al-Jazari, that he's no longer interested in going after material that show Prosecutor Sarah Sammy and Prosecutor Stephanie Buck falsified a whole entire case. I mean, when I was sitting in court, he's telling the judge that the police department did this to his client, did that to his client, falsified the case here, falsified it there, and you find out behind closed doors, he's telling the prosecutor, I'm not going to pursue anything. Is that not putting on a show? Absolutely. This is a sealed document. And now we get to find out that Brad Haywood is patching up a case for the police department. Either he's patching up a case in protecting a police department, or he's been threatened to just walk away. But we have a document we're looking at that he's protecting the police department. Whether he's because he's scared or because he's working for the county, it doesn't matter. You are working with the prosecutor against your client. All right, so let's read that one more time. Defense request 18C through D, internal affairs or disciplinary record concerning Officer Chad Mason and Robert Drum. Court ruling based on the Commonwealth Agreement to provide access. Defense withdraws this request, reserving the right to refile if the production is incomplete. Request 18E. Defense request complete training and certification record of Officer Mason and Drum, including training related to crash scene investigation, handling and preservation of digital evidence, interviewing child witness, and avoiding tainting of witness testimony. Court ruling granted the Commonwealth attorney. The Commonwealth shall produce these records subject to the existing protective order. Request 18F, I through I, two I's. Defense request information regarding prior interaction or knowledge of defendant by law enforcement, including statement identifying defendant as a drug user. Court ruling, if known or readily available to the Commonwealth, the name of the officer who provided this information to Investigator Drum, and the basis for that information must be disclosed. Okay, so here, the officer that showed up on scene, the minute the officer showed up on scene is Officer Case Fines. He tells the main investigator that Mustafa, and he points out Mustafa. It shows that Mustafa is in a coma in front of his vehicle. And he points out Mustafa, and he's laughing, and he says, knowing him, he's on drugs. And this tears he puts in a whole entire bias where the main investigator says, wherever the fuck he goes, I need a blood draw. They do a toxicology report on Mustafa. Mustafa has no alcohol and no drugs. But what this officer did, it shows there's body cam that show he says that he's being watched. Another officer says he's been briefed about him. Another officer has been following him. And then what you find out is that Mustafa was suing the police for $500,000. When the officer showed up on scene, the minute they showed up, they condemned Mustafa guilty. They haven't looked at the dash camera. They haven't looked at the computer inside the vehicle. They haven't reconstructed the vehicle. They haven't done anything. The minute they showed up, they condemned Mustafa guilty. And they said he's at fault. This is 18F. Page 3. All right, let's see if we can find the video where it shows Officer Casey Fines, the minute that he showed up, he condemned Mustafa guilty. Mustafa gets in a vehicle accident. And here you have a situation where they haven't done anything. The minute they showed up, they've condemned Mustafa guilty. That same officer is seen going around and telling bystanders that Mustafa is on drugs. I mean, imagine Mustafa's on the floor. He's in a coma. And then you have officer that go around telling bystanders a woman and her baby died. That guy that's on the floor in a coma, he's on drugs. I mean, the minute that Officer Drum, the main investigator, showed up on scene, that's what he's telling the main investigator. And that's on body cam. Let's see if we can find Officer Casey Fine. There we go.
$45.20, that'll be $3. I'm already here.
That's Mustafa right there. Mustafa's right here in front of his vehicle and then out of consciousness. And then he, at one point, goes into a complete coma. Officer Casey Fine shows up.
And then Mason and Wilhelm are on their way.
And then Mustafa guilty the moment he showed up.
Just while you do anything else.
No, we'll figure out where the bodies are going in a minute. Witnesses, anybody say what happened?
Yeah, there's a lady right over here in the black. She saw everything.
Okay.
I believe. This car is the at fault. This is the driver of that vehicle. Okay.
Thank you. So at fault so far. Crossed over when oncoming traffic.
I'm not 100% sure. Knowing him though, it's probably drug related.
Okay.
And he's laughing. I mean, look at that giant smile on his face. He's laughing. I mean, you've got a situation where Mustafa gets in a vehicle accident. He loses his family in a vehicle accident. He did everything he can to avoid a vehicle accident. Officers show up. The moment they showed up, he's laughing. I mean, that's... What are you laughing for? Pointing at Mustafa. Mustafa is in and out of consciousness. Mustafa's right there, laying on the floor in front of his vehicle, and you got officer that showed up. A minute they showed up, he says, he's on drugs, and he's laughing. What are you laughing for? I mean, is that not inserting a bias into this whole entire case? Where the main investigator, you hear him, I mean, at one point he says, whatever the fuck that guy goes, I need a blood draw. This is Mustafa's toxicology report. Mustafa Al-Jazari. This is blood alcohol non-detected. No alcohol in Mustafa's system. THC 0.0003. And this is the foundation of the whole entire case. No alcohol, no drugs. And then when you watch the dash camera, it shows that Mustafa and Dorothy are passing back and forth a hemp cigarette. They want to tell you that Mustafa and Dorothy are arguing inside the vehicle. But then they seal off the dash camera, and you find out that Mustafa and Dorothy are passing back and forth a hemp cigarette. And that's what they've been hiding. And that's why this dash camera has been sealed for 2.5 years. Moments before the vehicle accident, Mustafa and Dorothy are passing back and forth a cigarette. See if I can pull up the portion from the dash camera.
This is crazy.
I mean, did you see? I mean, look how Dorothy feels Mustafa's fingers as she grabs the cigarette. Where's the fucking argument? Look how she grabs Mustafa's fingers.
Unfucking believable.
This is
unbelievable.
We're going to watch this one more time. I mean, look how she grabs Mustafa's, feels
And they've
Mustafa's.
had this man behind bars for 2.5 years?
Why do you think this dash... Moments before the vehicle accident, Mustafa and Dorothy are passing back and forth a hemp cigarette. They seal off the dash camera. They falsify Mustafa's statement. They tell you that he told us he was arguing inside the vehicle. And you find out that Mustafa never said that. There's a recording. Mustafa never said that. Officer Robert Drum falsified Mustafa's statement. They seal off the dash camera. Officer that showed up. The minute they showed up on the scene, they condemned Mustafa guilty. That guy, he's on drugs. He's at fault. I mean, this is a toxicology report. No alcohol, no drugs. So, why did they condemn Mustafa guilty the moment they showed up? You find out there is a giant lawsuit that Mustafa was engaged in. There was a settlement for $500,000. Mustafa was suing the police before the vehicle accident. I mean, I have body cams where they showed up and they're talking about being briefed about Mustafa. Let's see if we have... This is Casey Fine telling us that Officer Duplessis... This one. Do we have... Yeah, there we go. All right. This is Officer Rob telling us that he's been briefed about Mustafa.
Hey, I talked to Grantham on the other one, and he said that it looked like. So we're good. We're good.
Sorry.
Everything's
We'll call you next time.
Hey, can I be honest with you? I don't even know that cat. I do now. I remember now that it was brought up.
I didn't even know this cat. I do now. He was brought up. Okay, you have Officer Rob being briefed about Mustafa. You have Casey Fine condemning Mustafa guilty the moment he showed up. So let's go back to the order and read what is being said in the order. So the judge granted any information, any bias against Mustafa. All right, so 18F, I through 2I. All right, defense requests information regarding prior interaction or knowledge of defendant by law enforcement, including statement identifying defendant as a drug user. Court ruling, if known or readily available to the Commonwealth, the name of the officer who provided this information to Investigator Drum and the basis for that information must be disclosed. It's Officer Casey Fines. All right. All right. Request 18G. The witness statement alleging defendant brother purchased an AR-15 style rifle and ammunition and related documentation. Withdrawal based on the Commonwealth response. Withdrawal granted. The witness statement alleging defendant brother purchased an AR style rifle and ammunition and related documentation. Court ruling, withdrawal based on the Commonwealth's response. Withdrawal granted. Okay, so she withdrew when she accused the brother of Mustafa that he bought an AR-15, 1,000 round. But did you withdraw that the mother, did you withdraw the allegation that you brought against the mother that she assaulted you in court? No, you didn't. So why is Mustafa's defense attorney not talking about that? Why is Mustafa's defense attorney not talking about the prosecutor telling the presiding judge that we're sitting here manufacturing bombs and setting fires to the courthouse? Where's Mustafa's defense attorney from the prosecutor defaming Mustafa and his family? But he's satisfied that she withdrew the AR-style rifle, but not the other stuff. He's going to pretend like the other stuff didn't happen. Why are you so soft on the prosecutor? Are you protecting this prosecutor? Request 18H, I through V. Defense request, internal communications between the Commonwealth and law enforcement regarding specific listed topics. Court ruling, the Commonwealth shall inquire whether anything was said to child witnesses prior to interviews that might have influenced their statement. The court declines to order disclosure of internal communications under 18V HV, except that the Commonwealth shall disclose any threat or intimidations experienced by its agent or prosecutions. You know, I'll tell you something about this paragraph here. This is not matching up what's going on in court. Judge Carol Weimer specifically ordered the prosecutor to disclose any body cam, any material that show that the police department weaponized the children. Mustafa's defense attorney has a forensic interview where the 14-year-old child is talking about the police department lied and weaponized him. That's what the child says. And the question is, where are the body cams before the children were walked into the forensic interview? Here you have a paragraph where prosecutor Stephanie Buck writes an order and Brad Haywood agrees to it. That's not what happened in court. The judge didn't deny the defense the body cams. But here you have a paragraph and it's worded in a way where the prosecutor is saying that the judge denied the defense has those body cams. Get those body cams. I mean, this is what Prosecutor Sarah Sammy and Stephanie Buck wrote. And you have a defense attorney that's agreeing to it. He's agreeing to misrepresentation from what actually happened in court. The judge granted you the body cams where the police department interacted with the children before they walked him into a forensic interview. But here, you're allowing the prosecutor to write an order misrepresenting what took place in court. And the question is, why are you protecting a prosecutor who clearly has officers that weaponized children? A 9, a 10, a 14, a 16. You're going to protect a prosecutor that's using officer that abused children? That's what you're doing. That's what Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, is doing. Let's watch the forensic interview where the child is talking about that the police department told him that Mustafa ran away, left your 5-year-old baby sister to bleed to death. We, the police, could have saved your baby sister if Mustafa didn't run away. Mustafa was in a coma. The police department lied to the children, weaponized the children against Mustafa. And here you have a situation where Mustafa's defense attorney is no longer pursuing the missing police body cams. That's going to show what this prosecutor is doing. Using officers to weaponize children that are 9, 10, 14, and 16. Brad Haywood, you're protecting a prosecutor Sarah Sammy, and prosecutor Stephanie Buck that abused a 9, a 10, a 14, and a 16. That's what you are doing. At this point, I'm not talking about the prosecutor. I'm not talking about the police department. I'm talking about you. You, the defense attorney, is protecting those prosecutors. Let's watch what the forensic interview, what this child is talking about in the forensic interview. And the question is, why is Mustafa's defense attorney no longer going after the missing body cams that show the police department weaponized those children?
When they got into the car crash, the detective said he jumped out and ran, left my baby sitting there. And if he just thought to...
The detective said Mustafa ran away, left his baby sister to bleed to death. Let's listen to that one more time.
When they got into the car crash, the detective said he jumped out and ran, left my baby sitting there. And if he just thought to bring her to the hospital, maybe she would have made it, but she didn't because he decided to be a coward. And now she's gone. And now all I have is my 2 brothers. She was the sweetest. She would never even hurt a fly. She was innocent too. 25. Now my mom's gone. Now she's gone. It's because of one man that I trusted. My mom kept on telling me he's a good guy. I kept on saying, okay. Alright, I told her, I had my suspicions and I should have went with my gut. I knew something wasn't right. And I still believed her, and that's why they're gone today.
The child says, I trusted Mustafa. Mom always told me trust Mustafa. It gives you insight into the relationship that Mustafa has with this child. Mustafa is a father figure in this child's life. Gives you insight into the relationship that Mustafa has with his girlfriend. Mom always told me, he said, the 14-year-old child says, I trusted Mustafa, and mom told me to always trust Mustafa. But the detective said, specifically, detectives that sat down with this child before he was walked into the forensic interview, based on the discovery that we have, is Investigator Romero. And Investigator Romero and other body cams, he says, I record everything. The question is, where are the body cams between Investigator Romero and this 14-year-old child, the 9-year-old child, the 10-year-old child, the 16-year-old child? Why are those police body cams not in the Mustafa Al-Jazari file? Because when I access the file, when I hack the server, the police department server, evidence.com, those files, those body cams are not there. They've been removed to not show what this police department did. They told this child that Mustafa ran away, left his baby sister, 5-year-old baby sister, to bleed to death. And they could have saved her. We, the police, could have saved your baby sister. But Mustafa ran away. What are you doing telling children that Mustafa ran away? Mustafa was in a coma. Mustafa was helicoptered to the hospital. Mustafa was in a coma. But you're lying to the children. And now Brad Haywood, let's go back to the order. Brad Haywood wants to say he allows the prosecutor in this order to write up an order that's not representing what happened in court. We have the transcript. We're going to go over the transcript. The judge granted and ordered the prosecutor to come up with those police body cams. But here, she writes the order where she misrepresents what actually took place in court. And Brad Haywood sits there and agrees to the order. Brad Haywood is absolutely protecting a prosecutor that's using officers that weaponized a 9, a 10, a 14, and 16. The next time you hire Brad Haywood, when you go home, look him up. Who is this defense attorney? Because if he's doing this in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case, you honestly think he's not going to do that in your case? Oh, absolutely. He will hand you in a silver platter to the prosecution. Let's read this one more time. Request 18H, I through V, defense request, internal communication between the Commonwealth and law enforcement regarding specific listed topics. The Commonwealth shall inquire whether anything was said to child witnesses prior to interviews that might have influenced their statement. The court declines to order disclosure of internal communications under 18HV, except that the Commonwealth shall disclose any threat or intimidation experienced by its agent or prosecutors. What they're doing here is they're mixing. Judge Carol Weimer granted the whole entire Brady motion to the defense for only one thing. The only thing he declines is Brad Haywood wanted the internal communications between Prosecutor Sarah Sammy, Prosecutor Stephanie Buck, with the police officers involved. He wanted those communications. He wanted the communication of the prosecutor with the individuals that are brought in as witnesses. Evidence show that the prosecution used fake witnesses. Police officers has a bias in this whole entire case. And based on this information, Brady versus Maryland entitles the defense to the communication of the prosecutor. Because here you have a situation where the prosecutor is allowing and using officers that falsified this case, witnesses that are fake. A prosecutor that's knowingly, throughout this whole entire case, what you find out is the officers are communicating and they're getting permission from this Prosecutor Sarah Sammy and Stephanie Buck, to do what they're doing. So Mustafa's defense attorney wanted that communication. He's entitled to that communication. The presiding judge did not grant the communication to the defense. Now, a real question is, why didn't Brad Haywood go after the communication? Why is he allowing this judge to not give him the communication? He's entitled to those communication. There's a case out of the Supreme Court, Brady versus Maryland, that by law, entitles the defense to these communications. Brad Haywood turns around and he's okay with the judge not granting him the communication. And essentially what's happening here is you're at the discretion of the prosecutor. A prosecutor that's been lying, using officers that falsified a case, using witnesses that have been lying, and fake witnesses. And when you just not go after the communication, I mean, it just showed that you are allowing a prosecutor to get away with it. And then here, you allow a prosecutor to misrepresent what actually happened in court. And you're grouping the body cam of the children, where the police weaponized the children, with not granting you the communication. Those are two separate issues, but the prosecutor wrote it in an order in a way where she's telling you here that the judge didn't grant the body cams to the defense, where the police weaponized the children. Those are two separate issues, but they're grouped up in a paragraph where it shows that the judge didn't grant the defense the body cam where the police weaponized the children, and the communication of the prosecutor with the police and the fake witnesses. The internal communication of the prosecutor. The question is, why is Brad Haywood allowing the prosecutor to misrepresent what actually happened in court? And he agrees with her. Defense request body. Okay, so request 18I through IV. Defense request body worn cameras or other recording. of the crime scene processing interaction with child witnesses or dash cam components. Court ruling is granted. Okay, so, all right, so here, body-worn cameras and other recordings of the crime scene processing. So anytime, crime scene processing is anytime the officers are talking to the individuals that are being used as witnesses, anytime the officer are talking to the children, anytime the officers are on scene, the police body cams for this whole entire case. And that's called crime scene processing. So the body cam for the crime scene processing. All right. Interaction with child witnesses and dash cam component. Okay. So the court ruled, they granted as to 18I, I through 3Is. The defense withdraws 18I and IV at this time. And what this is the crime scene processing. So Brad Haywood is no longer going after, even though the judge granted him the body cams of the crime scene processing, the body cams that show when the officers are talking to the individuals involved in this case. So Judge Weimer granted him those body cams, the missing body cams. And here, Brad Haywood says, I'm going to withdraw going after those body cams. Prosecutor Sarah Sammy, Prosecutor Stephanie Buck, Brad Haywood says, I don't want to get those body cams. Don't worry about giving me the body cams that show officers falsified a whole entire case. Officers using individuals that falsified this case. Fake witnesses. Officers that weaponized children. Mustafa's defense attorney, he says, even though the judge gave it to me, I don't need it. Is it not obvious that Brad Haywood is protecting the prosecutor? Is it not obvious that Brad Haywood is protecting officers that falsified this case? It's obvious. Why are you so soft on this prosecutor? Oh, you're protecting her police officers. You're protecting what her officers did in this case. You're protecting the prosecutor herself. Prosecutor Sarah Sammy and Prosecutor Stephanie Buck. All right, let's continue. By the way, this is not my word against this defense attorney here. Right here, it says the defense withdraws 18I and 18I IV. The crime scene processing, the body cams or other recording of crime scene processing. Right there. Let's highlight it. Crime scene processing. The body cams that show officer interacting with everybody. The judge grants it. Here, he grants it. You see that? He grants it right there. All right? But the defense, withdraw. Right there. The defense, withdraw. Brad Haywood is absolutely protecting Prosecutor Sarah Sammy and Prosecutor Stephanie Buck, who use officers that falsified this case. He doesn't need the body cam that show officers falsified this case. All right, 18J. Defense request raw body-worn camera footage, including files showing muted audio or possible editing. Court ruling, the Commonwealth must inquire whether any body-worn camera footage has been edited in any manner, and if so, must inform the defense of any such editing and the reasons therefore. The Commonwealth agrees to access and examines the audit, the trail on evidence.com for this case for the purpose of ensuring the integrity of the evidence per the order of the court. You know what's really funny about this? He's going to rely on the prosecutor to find out for him if the police department edited it, and muted and cut the body cams that are uploaded to the server. The file that we leaked on the internet, I managed to access the server for the police department, evidence.com, steal Mustafa's file. The file, the body cams that have been uploaded into the server show that the police department cut and edited those body cams before uploading it to the server. You're going to sit there and rely on a prosecutor. You're not going to go after her communication, what she was telling the officers, and how she is instructing officers to falsify this case, knowingly allowing officers to falsify this case. We have body cams that they're updating her every step of the way. Oh, you're going to trust that she's going to give you the material. Interesting. You're not going to go after her communication. Even though you're entitled by law to have her communication, internal communication, you don't need it. You're going to trust that she's going to do the right thing. A prosecutor that's been lying about the Mustafa Al-Jazari case for 2.5 years, you, Brad Haywood, is going to trust that prosecutor. Additional statement for the record. Both parties acknowledge that certain additional requests were included in the motion, but were not specifically raised during oral argument. As such, no formal ruling were made on those matters. Defense counsel may reissue any additional Brady request as necessary. The Commonwealth requests that defense counsel submit any specific Brady request prior to filing to allow the Commonwealth review and follow up in advance of any scheduled hearing. For the foregoing reasons and consistent with the ruling stated on the record, the court hereby orders the Commonwealth to comply with the above ruling entered 6th day of November. So this is entered on the 6th day of November. All right, here is, let's see, signature for Stephanie Buck, prosecutor Stephanie Buck, prosecutor Sarah Sammy. Okay, seen and agreed. All right, Bradley Haywood agrees to it. And what he agrees to is he's no longer going after the internal affair files to find out and disqualify. These officers are not certified to be on this case. They're not certified to be on this case. And even though he's granted to go in and have evidence to show that these officers, that prosecutor Sarah Sammy used Officer Chad Mason, put him on the stand, lied about Mustafa, had him testify that he's an expert witness, when he's really not. He's not certified as an expert witness. And he told us in a motion to dismiss that he's not. He testified that he's not an expert. You can't be an expert here and then be not an expert there. You're either an expert or you're not an expert. And here you have a situation that Brad Haywood is granted by Judge Carol Weimer to go in and get to the bottom of it and find out and disqualify this officer that cut and muted Mustafa's dash camera. Brad Haywood says, that's okay. I don't need the internal affairs files. I don't need to know if he's certified or not. You're protecting the prosecutor. We know that investigator Robert Drum, internal affairs, told us that he's not certified to be on this case. And then now you have a chance to go in and have that evidence that he's not certified. You say you don't want it. You're protecting officers. You're protecting the prosecutors, officers that falsified this whole entire case. When you don't go in and you don't want an internal affairs files, you're protecting those officers. You're no longer going after body cams that show officers falsified this whole entire case. You're protecting those officers. You're protecting the prosecutor that's been lying for 2.5 years. There is a document in Mustafa's case where the defense attorney, the county granted Mustafa's defense attorney funds to hire an independent expert to extract the dash camera. Let's see if we can find it. All right, so let's go here. All right, so there's an affidavit in the file, specifically page 916. Let's see if we can go to 916. There we go, 916. This is an affidavit. 926. No, page. Yeah, 916. There we go. This is an affidavit that was entered. This is public information. If you go into Prince William County Courthouse and access Mustafa's file, this is public information. Brad Haywood, on the 12th of September of this year, told the court that he has an expert that will go in and extract Mustafa's dash camera. This is a document, and this is an affidavit by the name of Brad Haywood's expert is Felipe Cruz Jr. And specifically, if you go to item number 4, okay, item number 4 says Investa Forensic utilizes state-of-the-art digital forensic collection procedure, which we have validated in many previous orders. So the company's name is Investa. Item number 4 says item number 1 says I'm a digital, right there. I'm a digital forensic examiner. I perform computer, cell phone, and info forensic for Investa Forensic. So this is a document put on the record by Brad Haywood telling the court that his independent expert is Investa. And this affidavit was entered on the 12th of September. Explain to me why I have a document. Let's see if we exit out of this. Explain to me how Brad Haywood puts in a joint motion with the prosecutor, taking the expert fund that was allocated for Mustafa's independent expert, Investa, and then he puts in a joint motion with prosecutor Sarah Sammy and prosecutor Stephanie Buck, and he takes the money and he gives it to the prosecutor's independent expert, Doug Lacey. Let's look at this document. And this document is entered on the 6th of November. This matter comes before the court upon the joint motion requesting authorization of expert witness fund in the above caption, upon consideration of the motion, and it's appearing to the court that the request is reasonable and necessary for the proper preparation and presentation of the case, it is hereby ordered that the joint motion is granted, and is further ordered that Mr. Doug Lacey, that's the prosecutor, independent expert, is hereby authorized to serve as an expert in the field of media authentication to the purpose of analyzing and attempting to retrieve any available audio from the dash camera footage relevant to this case, and it is further ordered that Mr. Lacey shall, that's the prosecutor, independent expert, Doug Lacey, shall be compensated at the government rate of $245 per hour or such other rate as may be deemed reasonable by the court for time reasonably expended in the performance of his duties as an expert witness, and it is further. So, $245 per hour. Where does that money come from? It's coming from the expert fund that the county gave Mustafa. In a transcript, Mustafa's defense attorney stands up in court and he says, Your Honor, I'm not going with Investa. Investa will not be going in. What I want to do is, since the prosecutor, independent expert, is going to go in, we'll just go with Doug Lacey. The prosecutor gets up and she says, Your Honor, we never filed for money for our experts. Mustafa's defense attorney says, Your Honor, they can take the funds that was given to my client and I can give it to the prosecutor's independent expert. How does that make any sense? You're not going with your independent. Why not? Why are you not going with your independent expert? On September 16, in a Brady motion, Brad Haywood argues and tells Judge Carol Weimer that evidence showed that the police department, specifically Officer Chad Mason, cut and muted this dash camera, and he needed to hire an independent expert, and we just looked at an affidavit by Investa, to go in and extract the SD card that the police department is in possession of. They have the dash camera, and in it, there's an SD card. He wants his independent expert to go in and download the original files, the metadata of the original files. So you have an officer that cut and muted this dash camera, but the original files is on the SD card. And he says, I need expert fund, money for an independent expert that I already have. We just looked at the affidavit by Investa. And he said, I want my independent expert to go in. Prosecutor Sarah Sammy gets up and she says, Your Honor, I want my independent expert to go in at the same time. And she says, Your Honor, my independent expert is sitting in court right now, Doug Lacey. And the judge said, sure, your independent expert is going to go in, and your independent expert is going to go in. Explain to me how today we're looking at a situation where Mustafa's defense attorney takes the money, no longer goes with his independent experts, Investa, and is now taking the money and giving it to the prosecutor, independent expert. You're going to give that money that's allocated to Mustafa's independent experts? You're going to give it to the prosecutor's independent expert after getting done arguing in a Brady motion that the prosecutor used officers that lied. The prosecutor has officers that has a bias. You're going to give it to her independent experts? My problem with this defense attorney is that he turns around to Mustafa and he tells him, Mustafa, you have two independent experts. That's not true. You just lied to your clients. You will no longer go with Investa. As a matter of fact, in court, you told Judge Carol Weimer Investa never went in. Hold on now. Don't I have a phone call with this attorney telling me prior to him telling the judge Investa never went in, will not be going in, never went in? He's telling me that Investa already went in. So you lied to me. You lied. You told me that Investa already went in. In an email with this defense attorney, Brad Haywood, he's attempting to explain himself. And he tells me that Doug Lacey, He says, no. Doug Lacey is not the prosecutor independent expert. I retained him myself as the defense. As a matter of fact, I've instructed Doug Lacey to not share any finding with the prosecution because he's my independent expert. Wait a minute. Am I not looking at a joint motion that you're taking the funds, the expert fund, giving it to the prosecution? This is a joint motion. Anything that defense, that independent expert finds is going to be sharing it with the prosecutor. You no longer have your independent expert. You have a joint expert. And the question is, why are you having a joint independent expert with the prosecutor? You're using the independent expert of the prosecutor, who you have been arguing in a Brady motion that the prosecutor has biased police officers, has been using officers that lied for 2.5 years. You already have a situation where this independent expert is already biased. The problem with this defense attorney is that he thinks he's smart, that he can just lie to his client, lie to the family, and what we're looking at, the filing inside the court, I mean, this is the filing. It's not matching up with what he's telling me. Order granting authorization of expert funds. A joint motion. Is that not a joint motion? Are you not now using the same independent expert? And the question is why? I mean, if you don't have faith in Investa, there is over 1,000 company that can go in and extract the dash camera. You do a Google search, there are so many companies. Oh, wait a minute. You're going to use the independent expert of the prosecutor, who you have, the county, can buy off and can just tell you, oh, there's no audio. I went in, there's no audio. But if you bring in an actual company, it's not easy to buy off that company. Forget all of this situation. Don't you have a hard drive given to you by the county? A hard drive where the county downloaded Mustafa's cell phone, downloaded his girlfriend 3 cell phones, and I find it interesting that they didn't upload this digital information to the server, the police department server. They didn't upload it to evidence.com. They put it on a separate drive. And that drive is 1 terabyte of information. And they mailed that to you. And when I tell you that, did you go through this drive? This was just about 3 weeks ago. He says you didn't go through the drive yet. Why not? Mustafa's cell phone, when the police department did a cell phone dump, has 3 apps. One for the dash camera, one for the Google Nest, one for the Alexa. If you're talking about extracting the full dash camera before Officer Chad Mason cut and muted it, well, it's on Mustafa's cell phone. He has an app that automatically uploads it to the clouds. And the police department did a cell phone dump and gave you that information. So, is it not fair to say that you are protecting the county by not going through that drive and completely avoiding that drive? I mean, I find it interesting. I sent you an email about a week ago. And you told me that I can't share any information with you about that drive. Well, I'm not asking you to share anything with me. I'm telling you, your client is asking that you sit down with him and go over the cell phone dump. Your client is asking you to go through that cell phone dump. In your response, you tell me I can't share it with you. I didn't ask you to share it with me. And what I'm specifically doing, I'm putting it on the record. I'm putting on the record that you know that the dash camera is on that cell phone dump, the drive that the county gave you. That the Google Nest is on that drive. That the Alexa information is on that drive. And you are avoiding it to protect this county. Absolutely, you're protecting this county. I mean, we can sit here and we're not speculating whether the dash camera is on Mustafa's cell phone dump. I have a transcript from the previous attorney, Mustafa's defense attorney. The previous defense attorney before Brad Haywood is Blake Weiner. I mean, we can sit here and you can tell me, well, that's it's your word against my word. It's your word against the county. You're speculating that the dash camera is on the drive, is on the cell phone dump, the drive that the county mailed to Brad Haywood. Well, we don't have to speculate when let's see, I have a transcript where Mustafa's previous defense attorney tell you what's on the drive that the county is giving every defense attorney that enters this case. Well, let's go to the transcript. Let's see what the previous attorney, Blake Weiner, is telling the presiding judge and what's on the hard drive that the county has given him. This is November 20, 2024. The data extraction from multiple cell phones of the two individuals, in this case, who have passed, as well as, I believe, like a third family phone. There might even be a fourth phone. But it's multiple cell phones, as well as, I believe, all the data. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, one of the cell phones for my client, and also the data extraction from the dash camera that was part of this case. In total, off the top of my head, I believe the data extraction, it was large enough that it needed at least a 1 terabyte hard drive for the Commonwealth to put the data in. So what the police department is doing, when they downloaded Mustafa's cell phone, they did a cell phone dump. When they downloaded his girlfriend's cell phone, she has 3 cell phones, they did a cell phone dump. And instead of uploading it to the police department server, evidence.com, instead they put it on a hard drive. And what they've done is they would email that hard drive, that 1 terabyte hard drive, to the defense attorney. And here, the previous attorney tells you what's on this hard drive is the dash camera. Now, 2.5 years, Mustafa's been in solitary confinement. 2.5 years, the prosecutor, Sarah Sammy, prosecutor Stephanie Buck, Commonwealth Amy Ashworth, tell you that this dash camera doesn't have audio. Well, at one point, the main investigator, Officer Chad Mason, testifies to that he took the dash camera back to his vehicle when he showed up on scene. They took the dash camera back to his car, took the SD card, plugged it into his computer, downloaded the files, took the SD card back into this dash camera, plugged it back into the windshield. And he said, I sat on those files for 2 days. 2 days later is when I got a warrant for this dash camera. And then he says, I uploaded it to the server, evidence.com, the police department server. And what he testifies to is he said, I violated the chain of custody. What I was supposed to do is take the dash camera to digital forensic and have her mirror and copy the files. And then she was the one that's supposed to upload the files to the server, to the police department server. That didn't happen. Instead, Officer Chad Mason is the one that sat on those files for two days, got a warrant 2 days later, and then he's the one that uploaded to the server. Now, the problem here is, clearly, Officer Chad Mason is telling you, I tampered with the dash camera. I uploaded a cut and muted version of this dash camera to the server. Because when Officer Cassie Zymus, digital forensic, finally got this dash camera, Cassie Zymus tells you that this dash camera does have audio. She testified that this dash camera does have audio. So, you have an officer that's testifying to cutting and muting the dash camera. You have a situation where a police department did a cell phone dump on Mustafa's cell phone. And on Mustafa's cell phone, there are apps, 3 apps. The dash camera, the Google Nest inside the apartment, and the Alexa. And automatically, when you do a cell phone dump, the full dash camera, before this officer got to it, is on the cell phone dump. So what the county did, to avoid anybody finding out, they put it on a separate hard drive. And they would email it to the defense attorney. They wouldn't upload it to the server, because the minute you upload it to the server, it's going to contradict the narrative that's coming out of this police department. And now you have a situation where Brad Haywood is protecting the county. When you're avoiding the hard drive that has the dash camera, that has the Google Nest videos inside the apartment, that has the Alexa, when you're avoiding it, you are protecting the county. We don't have to speculate to whether the dash camera is on that drive. Blake Weiner, the previous defense attorney, tells the presiding judge in court that the drive that the county gave him has the dash camera. Brad Haywood, you are put on notice. You received an email telling you that you should sit down with your client. Your client is demanding. I'm not telling you go over it with me. I love how you're deflecting and gaslighting by replying to me, telling me, oh, I can't go over this drive with you. There's a protective order. Well, I'm not telling you go over it with me. I'm putting on the record that your client, Mustafa Al-Jazari, is asking you, Brad Haywood, to go over that drive and sit down with him and go over the material in that drive. And if you don't, this is a violation of Mustafa's due process. This is exculpatory evidence that knowingly you're avoiding to protect this county. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is not another boring podcast. Don't forget to share the podcast. Hit the like button. This is not another boring podcast. When we come back, when we do another podcast tomorrow, hopefully we're going to do one tomorrow. When we do another podcast, we're going to dive into Brad Haywood motion. He filed a production of Brady material, and he filed a response to the prosecutor. So there are a couple of motions that are filed by Brad Haywood. There are a couple of motions in response that are filed by Sarah Sammy. We're going to dive into those motions. And when we go over those motions, we're going to play the relevant body cams that will show what this police department did to falsify the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. And then at one point, we're going to dive into the transcript. We might break this into 2 podcasts because of the large volume in these motions and in this transcript. I think it's a better way of organizing the podcast if we break it in multiple podcasts. I mean, just going over the order took just about 2 hours. So having multiple podcasts, I think, is a really good idea, just so we slow down the conversation and we can get to the bottom of what Brad Haywood is doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case, because Brad Haywood is doing a lot of questionable things. And it sure sounds he's protecting the county. But unfortunately for Brad Haywood, Mustafa Al-Jazari has a giant podcast that is putting this case under a microscope, that's putting Brad Haywood, the defense attorney, under a microscope, that's putting the whole entire county under a microscope in what they're doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. We have the whole entire file that's sealed by Commonwealth Amy Ashworth. It's no longer sealed. We've hacked the police department server, evidence.com. We stole the file. We stole other files that the county is engaged in falsifying other cases. That's a different podcast for a different conversation. We're leaking the police body cams. We're leaking the discovery documents. The transcript inside the court is unsealed, is public. Now they're public. The DOJ is heavily investigating this case. The transcript in a sealed case is now public. So you have the body cam, you have the discovery documents that are leaked on the internet. Now you have the filing of Brad Haywood, and all the filing and the transcript of what is being said in court is now public. What we've managed to do on this podcast is have transparency in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. Now, when we put Brad Haywood under the microscope, this is not to attack Brad Haywood. What we're doing here is we're reading the transcript, looking at the filing by this defense attorney, and we're asking the question. The community is asking questions in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case, and it sure looks like Brad Haywood is not protecting Mustafa, is not protecting his client, is protecting the county that falsified the whole entire case. Now, is he doing it because he's working for the county? We don't know. Is he doing it because he's been threatened by the county? We don't know. But what we know for sure is that Brad Haywood is not working for Mustafa. We're going to continue to put Brad Haywood under the microscope. We reach out to Brad Haywood, and we invite him on this podcast to tell us what he's doing in the Mustafa. He's always welcome to be on this podcast. We're going to continue to put him under the microscope, and we're going to get to the bottom of what Brad Haywood is doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. Because if he's doing this in the Mustafa, if he's protecting a police department that falsified his client's case, Mustafa Al-Jazari, absolutely, he's doing it in other cases. And this is a huge problem because he present himself in our community that he's a defense attorney, that he has a civil right organization called Justice Forward. Well, the real question is, you have a civil right organization. Your client was beaten up and abused by guards inside the jail. We have a CCTV video that we released where correctional officers are seen to go in, beat Mustafa, and then carry out an unconscious, half-naked Mustafa from one cell into another cell where they continue to beat and abuse your client. You have a civil right organization called Civil Justice Forward. Well, where are you, and why have you not done anything to protect your client who was abused inside the jail by correctional officers? If I didn't know any better, your civil right organization is not called Justice Forward. It should be called Justice Backward. We have a video where you have a bunch of paid actors, and you're talking about protecting, serving this community, that you're here for this community, but you're sitting on a case where the police department falsified your client's case. You're sitting on a case where correctional officers beat and abused your client inside the jail. We have a CCTV video. Where are you from defending your client? Your actions in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case are very questionable, and it sure shows that you are protecting this county. We're going to continue to put Brad Haywood under the microscope, and we're going to get to the bottom of what is going on in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. When we come back, we're going to go over the filing for the Brady motion, and that's going to be a podcast. And then we're going to jump into the transcript from the Brady motion. And you don't have to take my word for what I'm talking about. When I talk about Mustafa's defense attorney and what he's doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case, we have the document that show this defense attorney is not working for Mustafa. I mean, explain to me why this defense attorney never picks up his phone and doesn't talk to Mustafa. I mean, Judge Carol Weimer in court says, by the end of September, I need you to reconstruct the vehicle accident and extract the full dash camera. We're in November. We are in November. Trial is just around the corner. Trial is in March. Mustafa's defense attorney, Brad Haywood, have not updated Mustafa on the reconstruction. Brad Haywood have not updated Mustafa on the extraction of the dash camera. And when Mustafa calls him, he doesn't pick up. And at one point, he told Mustafa, dude, fuck off. Why are you telling your client to fuck off? That's interesting. Mustafa is asking you for the most basic thing he can ask for in his case. He's telling you what happened to my extraction of where's my dash camera? The government gave you money to hire an independent expert. Where's my dash camera? The government gave you money to hire an independent expert to reconstruct the vehicle. Where is the reconstruction? Can I go over the hard drive that the county gave you? My dash camera, my home videos, everything is on the drive. You told your client to fuck off. We're going to continue to have Brad Haywood under the microscope, and we're going to get to the bottom of what he's doing in the Mustafa Al-Jazari case. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is not another boring podcast. Mustafa through the police body cam. Brad Haywood, you are under the microscope.
If any of that is posted anywhere on the internet, we're going to have problems. Whatever copies have been made of that, those need to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay? If they get disclosed, that is going to put me in a situation where I will have to withdraw from the case.
Okay.
If you disclose that information in any way, all of it needs to be destroyed now. But if you disclose it in any way, it's going to put me in a position where I will have to withdraw from the case. If you all choose to go on the internet and try to publicize this stuff, that's going to create real problems.
Okay.
You can't do it. That's what I'm telling you. You cannot do it. I will have to move to withdraw from the case.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
So make sure everybody's aware of that. Okay. If any of that is posted anywhere on the internet, we're going to have problems. Whatever copies have been made of that, those need to be destroyed.
Okay.
Okay. If they get disclosed, that is going to put me in a situation where I will have to withdraw from